They say betrayal doesn't come from enemies. It comes from the one who used to fall asleep on your chest, from the hand that held yours through loss, from the voice that once whispered, "You're my whole world." I used to believe that, until I watched that same voice call me a joke. My name is Adam Pearson. I was 38 when the world split in two. She was in Reno when it happened. I was in our home in Salt Lake holding a cup of chamomile tea she used to make for me during flu season. Funny how habits linger longer than people. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back, not to the end, but to the beginning of the lie. Melissa and I met during a networking brunch at her law firm. She was sharp, witty, ambitious, the kind of woman who always had a plan. I worked in structural engineering. Quiet, steady, good with blueprints, bad with people. She said she liked that about me, that I was calm, stable, her anchor. I believed her. She moved in after 8 months. Proposed a joint savings account before I even asked her to move in. Looking back, that was twist in one. Not the betrayal, not yet, but the quiet seed of control. She said it was for the future. A house, kids, maybe a cabin in Big Cottonwood Canyon. We built that future, or so I thought. I paid for the wedding. Most of it. She wanted something elegant but intimate. A destination wedding in Lake Tahoe. I footed the bill without question. Said yes to the dress, the venue, the ring upgrade she casually hinted at over brunch with her friends. "I'll handle the legal documents," she said one evening, sipping wine with that tight-lipped smile she used when she was 2 steps ahead. I didn't ask what documents. That would be my first mistake. But not my last. We'd been married 3 years when she started working under her new firm partner Gregory March. He was older, married, silver-haired, Harvard smile, the kind of guy who used leverage in casual conversation. I didn't think much of him at first. She brought him up like a mentor. "Greg says I have executive potential. Greg thinks I could make partner by next year." I nodded, supported her, picked up more house chores, took fewer overtime shifts to be home when she started traveling more, always for conferences, team-building retreats, or corporate workshops. Then came Reno, a 4-day legal summit. She left on a Wednesday morning, kissed me on the forehead, didn't pack her wedding ring. I noticed. Said nothing. Friday night, 11:42 p.m. My phone lit up with a text from one of Melissa's coworkers. Justine. We'd met once at a firm BBQ. She was younger, quiet, clearly not in the clique. "Adam, I'm sorry. You should see this." Attached was a 16-second video. Melissa, drunk, in a velvet dress I'd never seen, laughing, wrapped around Gregory in a booth at the Reno Grand. His hand was on her thigh. She said, "Adam? He's sweet, but kind of a joke, like a rescue dog. Loyal but dull." I watched that clip 6 times. Then I vomited in the kitchen sink. Saturday afternoon, she called, said she'd be home Sunday night. I said, "Can't wait." She didn't notice anything in my voice. That was the first time I realized just how invisible I had become to her. Sunday she returned. Laughed when I asked how the trip was. Said, "Why so serious, Adam? It was just a work trip. Don't go full insecure husband on me." I didn't reply. Just stared at the ring she still hadn't put back on. Monday morning I contacted a lawyer. I needed facts, not feelings. Proof, not pain. Justine helped me get both. She sent screenshots, emails, timestamps, enough to make even the most seasoned divorce attorney raise an eyebrow. I didn't confront Melissa. Not yet. Instead, I copied everything, printed it, backed it up twice. Created a secure drive under a fake name. You see, when your wife calls you a joke, you learn to play the long game. 3 weeks later, Melissa sent me a calendar invite. "Dinner with Greg Partners. Need you there." Optics. Her words. Not mine. So I went. Wore the navy suit she always said made me look too conservative. I wore it anyway. Sat across from her and Gregory at the upscale steakhouse downtown. She introduced me as Adam, my husband. He's an engineer. Super methodical. The table chuckled. Gregory smirked. I took a sip of my drink and said nothing. Because I knew something they didn't. I'd already moved $62,000 out of the joint account. My name was never on the house deed. But hers wasn't on my patent royalties either. The ones she used to scoff at, who buys storm-resistant decking brackets. Apparently, a lot of people. Enough to make the next part possible. That night, while she laughed with her boss, I set up a meeting. Not with her. With her boss's wife. Because betrayal's twin is silence. And I had plenty of that to spare. Wife left me for her boss on trip to Reno and called me a joke, but I'd be the one laughing. Part 2, the things she didn't know I knew. The first time I met Gregory March's wife, I wore a gray sweater and brought her a coffee. She opened the door of their home in Draper, with a confused smile, thinking I was delivering something. I introduced myself quietly, directly. "My name is Adam Pearson," I said. "Melissa's husband." Her expression flickered. She already knew. But she didn't know what I knew. Her name was Claire. She was nothing like her husband. Soft-spoken, serious eyes. A kind of woman who observed more than she spoke. We sat on her porch. She didn't ask why I was there. She just said, "Show me." So I did. I handed her a brown envelope with the printed photos, the text logs, and the video. Everything Justin had sent me. Claire's hands didn't shake, but her breathing changed, deep and slow, like someone steadying for a storm. She flipped through the pages. Didn't stop until the end. Then she said, "Do you want to destroy them?" I looked at her for a long second, then nodded. And that was the moment the war began. Not loud, not angry, just coordinated. Melissa kept playing normal. Date nights, casual touches, laundry folded just the way I liked it, like muscle memory rehearsing a lie. But I could see her change. Not guilt. Caution. She started checking my phone when I left it on the counter. Asked where I was going when I left for walks. She'd hug me longer, but look over my shoulder. She wasn't sorry. She was scared. That meant she knew something was coming. She just didn't know when. 2 weeks after our dinner with her firm, she left for another off-site retreat. I knew it wasn't just business. She packed lingerie I didn't recognize and texted Greg from the bathroom. I saw the reflection in her compact mirror while brushing my teeth, so I sent Claire the green light. The next morning, Gregory's company inbox received a forwarded message. A simple subject line. "Internal policy breach. Review request attached." Inside was a PDF. Screenshots of Greg and Melissa's intimate messages, time-stamped during work hours, and from corporate email accounts. Claire had pulled them from the family iPad he forgot to log out of. You'd be amazed how sloppy smart people get when they think they've already won. The firm launched an internal review. Gregory was temporarily placed on administrative leave. The same day, Melissa came home early. She didn't say anything at first, just stood in the kitchen holding her phone. Lips pressed thin. "You did this," she said quietly. I shrugged. "I didn't write those emails." She flung her phone across the room. It cracked against the wall. And that was the first time she raised her voice since Reno. "You're pathetic, Adam. You think this makes you strong? You're still nothing. Just a quiet little man clinging to a woman who outgrew you." She waited for me to yell, to cry, to ask why. But I just looked at the broken phone and said, "You should start packing." She blinked. "Excuse me? I filed for divorce last week," I said, sliding a manila envelope across the counter. "You're being served tomorrow, but I figured I'd give you a head start." Her face twisted into something I didn't recognize. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "You don't even know what you're due." That's when I stood, walked over, calmly picked up her cracked phone, and whispered, "No, Melissa, you never knew what I was capable of." She moved out 3 days later to a rental apartment downtown, claimed it was temporary. But her boss being suspended wasn't temporary. Her firm wasn't happy. Neither was HR. Especially after Justine came forward too. Turns out Melissa had been billing hours during her retreats, falsifying timesheets. She used to joke that law was about shaping truth. Now she'd shaped it into a noose. Her exit from the firm was labeled mutually agreed separation. But Claire told me what really happened. Gregory flipped, threw Melissa under the bus, said she pressured him, that she exaggerated their relationship, that she even threatened to expose personal information if he didn't support her promotion. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was slander, false accusations to save himself. Melissa called me sobbing, not apologizing, pleading. "I need you to tell them this wasn't harassment, that I'm not some manipulator. Adam, they're trying to ruin my career." I listened in silence, then calmly said, "You called me a rescue dog. Loyal, but dull. Remember." Silence on the line. "I guess you were right about the loyal part," I continued. "But dull? No. That's what got you caught." I hung up, blocked her number. She still had no idea what was coming next. Because this wasn't just about cheating. It was about how she tried to erase me financially, emotionally, legally. A week after she moved out, I went through our shared accounts again. I found something. She had co-signed a lease. Not the apartment she was in. A luxury condo in Reno. Signed before the trip. Paid for in full. Under our joint account. Using my credit line. She tried to move the charges through a shell LLC. I didn't recognize at first. MB March Consulting. Melissa and Gregory's initials. They were planning a new venture. Behind my back. With my credit. I forwarded the documents to my lawyer. Then filed for credit fraud and breach of marital fiduciary duty. That would trigger a court-mandated asset freeze, meaning Melissa couldn't touch any shared funds until a forensic accountant reviewed everything. And we weren't even in court yet. The final twist in part 2 came when Justine, the quiet coworker who first messaged me, sent one last email. She forwarded me a video. It was taken 2 months earlier during a retreat in Tahoe. Melissa and Greg. Kissing. In the background, one of the firm's junior partners, who by firm policy was under Greg's mentorship. The same junior partner who'd later be called as a witness during the internal review. And the video. It showed clearly that Melissa had lied about something crucial. She wasn't manipulated. She was the one giving orders. And the firm had a zero-tolerance policy for senior associates coercing or threatening junior staff even indirectly. The video sealed it. Gregory's name was scrubbed from the firm site the next morning. Melissa's LinkedIn went blank 2 days later. But I wasn't done. Because now it was time for my legal move. The one she never saw coming. Wife left me for her boss on trip to Reno and called me a joke. But I'd be the one laughing. Part 3. The joke wore a suit. You don't prepare for war by screaming. You do it by documenting. By filing. By knowing when to say nothing. And when to hand the judge a binder. After I filed for divorce, Melissa assumed it would be clean. A split of assets. Maybe a few cold glares and mediation. A signature. Done. She didn't realize I wasn't walking away bruised. I was walking in prepared. The day our court proceedings began, she arrived in beige blouse, ironed, makeup precise, posture straight. She was always good at performance. She even greeted me like nothing had ever happened. Adam, she smiled, soft as static. Can we be civil today? I didn't answer. Just slid my chair back and opened my folder. Inside were 3 things. A copy of the Reno lease agreement with her signature. A timeline of unauthorized charges to our joint account, cross-verified with travel dates. A notarized statement from Claire March, Gregory's now ex-wife, confirming Melissa's knowledge and initiation of the consulting LLC. Her smile died when she saw what I handed to my lawyer. When we entered the courtroom, the judge began with a tone I'd never forget. Given the nature of the alleged financial misconduct, this divorce proceeding will now include civil review of marital fraud and credit abuse. Melissa shifted in her seat. Her lawyer whispered something. She didn't respond. I watched her eyes flicker across the room, looking for a lifeline that wasn't there. And then came the real blow. The court clerk opened a sealed envelope. Inside, bank records from the LLC they tried to bury. Melissa had named me as a non-active financial guarantor, which meant she had committed fraud using my name without my knowledge on a corporate entity built on stolen time and lies. The judge paused. Mrs. Pearson, you do understand that forging financial authorizations carries criminal consequences. Melissa stammered. My husband, Adam, he knew about the business. He didn't object. Do you have written consent from Mr. Pearson? The judge asked. She opened her mouth, closed it again. I didn't flinch, and that's when she snapped. Right there, on record. She stood and shouted, he's manipulating this whole thing. He's trying to ruin me. You don't understand. He's been emotionally abusive for years. Controlling, isolating. Ask anyone. The courtroom went still. The judge held up a hand. Do you have any documentation of abuse, Mrs. Pearson? Any record of emotional distress? Therapy? Medical reports? Anything? Her lawyer looked like he wanted to sink into the floor. Melissa blinked rapidly, then forced out, I have texts from our arguments. The judge nodded. Please submit those. She did. 3 days later, those messages were reviewed. The court clerk printed them. I saw the pages, all 14 of them, out of context quotes. Cherry-picked phrases like, this feels unfair and I just want space to think. That was her abuse claim. But she'd forgotten something. My phone kept a synced archive, and I had every full conversation. Not just cherry-picked lines, but full polite messages, clear boundaries, compromises, even apologies from me. I submitted the full threads. When the judge read them, he looked up and said, "This is not evidence of abuse. This is an example of respectful marital communication." Her accusation crumbled, and with it her credibility. The court declared the abuse claims unfounded. But the consequences didn't stop there. Because now her strategy had flipped into slander. She had accused me publicly, in court, of being emotionally abusive, without a single piece of real evidence. That opened the door to a defamation counterclaim. My lawyer walked through that door like he owned the building. And then came the last witness. Not Claire, not Justine, but Gregory March. He was called by her attorney, a desperate move to show she'd been manipulated. It backfired. Hard. Gregory took the stand and admitted under oath that he and Melissa had discussed removing Adam from the picture in a business context. The courtroom murmured. The judge had to ask for silence. Greg continued, stumbling through legal jargon he clearly didn't understand, claimed Melissa wanted independence, and that she talked about creating a version of herself without attachments. When pressed, he admitted she referred to me as an anchor. Then the bombshell. He admitted that she suggested filing a restraining order against me, preemptively, in case I made things messy during the business launch. None of that ever happened, because I hadn't done a single thing to her. It was all fabricated. A backup plan. A legal time bomb she had built in case I ever stood up for myself. And now, it was her neck in the collar. When the judge recessed, Melissa sat at the table, arms crossed, jaw locked. She didn't look at me. Didn't look at anyone. That was the moment I realized. She wasn't sorry. She was only ever sorry she got caught. And even now, she still thought she might find a way out. She didn't understand yet. There was no way out. I wasn't fighting for revenge anymore. I was fighting to never have to say her name again. Wife left me for her boss on trip to Reno and called me a joke. But I'd be the one laughing. Part 4. The collapse she didn't hear coming. The first time Melissa ever told me she loved me, we were standing in an empty condo we couldn't afford yet. The lights didn't work. The floors creaked. There was dust on the windows. She looked around and said, "This could be ours someday." Back then, I believed her. Now I was sitting in a courtroom as she watched her future dissolve. And the collapse was silent, like a building that had been hollowed from within long before anyone noticed the cracks. She still thought she could win something. But the court wasn't listening to her performance anymore. It was listening to the paper trail. 2 weeks into the hearing, my lawyer submitted a forensic audit of our finances. It showed 27 unauthorized transfers from our joint savings, multiple expenses marked as client development that were actually personal trips with Gregory, a second hidden credit card account opened in my name with over $14,000 in charges Melissa could not explain. She tried to claim I had access to those accounts. My attorney calmly presented login records showing only one IP address ever accessed them. Hers. It wasn't even a dramatic takedown. It was surgical. Slice by slice, we peeled back every lie she built. Then came the emergency injunction. Because of the fraudulent activity, including the forged signature and unauthorized credit use, the judge ordered a freeze on Melissa's personal assets, pending full civil review. That meant her car, the Lexus she leased under the LLC's name, frozen. Her Reno condo, frozen. Her severance package from the law firm, pending civil outcome. Even her laptop, which contained digital records, was subpoenaed. She sat at the hearing, shell-shocked. Like the walls were closing in, but no one was raising their voice. Just paperwork. Just dates, signatures, codes. The same quiet structure I had built my life around that she once mocked for being boring, was now the very thing undoing her. Then, the twist. Her lawyer stood and announced Melissa would be filing her own suit, claiming emotional distress and defamation based on the humiliation she experienced during the HR inquiry and the collapse of her firm reputation. It was a bluff, a desperate swing, but it forced a temporary delay. And during that delay, someone flipped. Justine, the woman who had first warned me, the one who sent the video. She filed a formal affidavit. Under oath, she confirmed Melissa had bragged about using emotional manipulation to play Adam like a bank account. Stated openly that she was building a consulting firm with Gregory without telling me. Claimed she had a plan to break him before he could break me, referring to me. She even had voice memos. Recordings from car rides and private conversations Melissa never imagined would be preserved. I didn't know she had them. Neither did Melissa. The first time she heard them was in court. They played one of the clips. Melissa's voice. Adam's harmless, like a Labrador. Loyal, dumb, and way too decent to ever fight back. I'll file something if I have to. Make it messy so he stays quiet. That's how women win in divorce. You could hear the clink of a wine glass in the background. The courtroom didn't move. Not a breath. And when it stopped, the judge looked down at his notes and said, "I'm terminating the remainder of this hearing until further review of criminal liability. Mrs. Pearson, your conduct may constitute premeditated fraud and malicious intent." That was the first time Melissa looked scared. Not angry. Not smug. Scared. We walked out of the courtroom in silence. She didn't speak to me. Didn't make eye contact. And I didn't need her to. Because by then, it wasn't about revenge. It was about reality. I had no interest in punishing her anymore. The courts would handle that. My interest was erasure. Complete, permanent distance. Later that month, the civil court granted sole ownership of all remaining marital assets to me due to financial abuse and malicious conduct. Melissa received no alimony, no settlement, and due to the fraud, she was ordered to pay restitution for the unauthorized charges over $61,000. Her bar license was placed under review. Gregory, now divorced, filed a restraining order against her. And as for the Reno condo, she lost it. She sold her Lexus 2 weeks later to cover legal fees. And I bought a small cabin in Big Cottonwood Canyon, just like we used to dream about. But I filled it with peace, not promises. The final time I saw Melissa was at the courthouse elevator. She stepped in, saw me and froze. I nodded politely. She looked like she wanted to say something, but she didn't, just stared. I think she expected me to mock her, to gloat, but I didn't need to. She was already living in the ruins. And I was already gone. Wife left me for her boss on trip to Reno and called me a joke, but I'd be the one laughing. Part 5. The man she thought would stay broken. The morning the final ruling came down, I didn't dress up. No suit, no tie, just jeans, a plain jacket and the calm I'd earned. The courtroom was half empty. Melissa wasn't there. Her attorney showed up alone and handed the clerk a signed statement. The respondent waives further objection and withdraws all counterclaims. No apology, no retraction of the lies, just quiet surrender. They expected to feel something. Victory, closure, maybe even satisfaction. But I felt nothing. And in that moment, I realized that was the real win. The judge's ruling was final. I was awarded full control over all remaining shared assets. Melissa was barred from contacting me for non-legal matters. Her false abuse claims were formally declared defamatory. She was ordered to complete financial restitution, and her law license was officially suspended pending further ethics investigation. The paper trail of her lies had finally outpaced her charm. I never spoke to her again. Not a single text. Not even when Claire, Gregory's ex, emailed me to say Melissa had taken a job at a paralegal temp agency in another state. She was living in a one-bedroom apartment above a pawn shop. Still fighting the restitution order. Still blocked on every channel of mine. And still, somehow, thinking she might claw her way back. Me? I built something. Something slow, quiet, intentional. I started a small consulting firm. Just me and a few former engineers who'd also been burned by the system. We helped small builders avoid legal traps and permits and zoning, the kind Melissa and Greg used to exploit for personal gain. Funny how that works. The man she mocked for being methodical and boring had built a business from the ruins she left behind. One night, a few months after everything ended, I sat on the porch of my cabin in Big Cottonwood, snow falling in soft bursts, and I thought about the version of me she knew. The man who apologized too quickly, who handed over financial control because he thought love meant trust, who mistook silence for peace. That man is gone. Replaced not by someone bitter, but by someone untouchable. I didn't need revenge that screamed. I needed revenge that lasted. And this was it. The silence. The life she can't reach. The version of me she never believed existed because it didn't serve her to see me that way. The truth is, I was never the joke. I was the blueprint. And she just didn't understand the structure until it came down around her. They say power is loud, but I've learned otherwise. Power is knowing you don't have to say a word. It's watching the people who tried to break you carry the weight of their own choices, while you sit quietly in the home they said you'd never build without them. So if you've been where I was, if you've ever been made to feel like nothing more than harmless, like a placeholder in someone else's ambition, let me say this: stay silent, stay steady, And one day they'll realize the man they called a joke was just the one holding the final page of their story. And he didn't even need to read it aloud. What would you have done in my place? Let me know in the comments. And if this story hit hard, subscribe for more real stories of quiet revenge, earned power, and the strength it takes to rebuild. Thanks for listening.